Hi there, this is just a overview of an A+ grade for Task 3, Creating Text Persuasive, where a student has decided to respond to or make the statement that alley fashion needs to change their humanitarian and environmental policies. So in that statement, they have clarified their stance. They're not having a discussion, they're arguing one point of view. And based on the opening, we can see that their audience is alley fashion directly, as they've written this persuasive response as an open letter. Dear Alley Fashion, which is a direct address. It's a letter of complaint. You are a thriving young ladies' clothing store who claims to provide customers with new and exciting choices. However, upon research into your company's policies, it is clear that you aren't as honest as people think. And here we have, and throughout the entire piece, emotive language such as thriving young ladies. We have claims, but more importantly, it is clear that you aren't as honest as people think, which is a direct attack towards alley fashion and is also a bit of a generalization up until this point. The 2019 Ethical Fashion Report, which grades fashion companies from A to F based on the strength of their humanitarian and environmental policies, also agrees. So they've now backed up their statement with an expert opinion, which they use as the basis of this open letter being somewhat play on words of alley fashion being a student, or otherwise known as alley, failing such grades. As such, alley, you have failed miserably and it's time to go back to school. So it's a bit of a cliche, but we know what the term back to school means. It means to re-educate oneself. You have earned an F for every criterion, indicating extremely poor working conditions and a devastating impact on the environment. It is time to change, and I'm not talking about clothes. So there, once again, their position is made. There's a bit of a play on words about I'm not talking about clothes because it's about changing their production, not the clothes themselves. But I like how in their introduction they have restated their position. In other words, Ali, you need to update your humanitarian environmental policies for the benefit of your workers in developing countries and the health of the planet. And here we can see that they've outlined in this short statement their stance, but also their 3 or 2 more or less positions that they're going to make. You can see that nowhere does it state in this essay I will discuss, as they are writing and addressing this as an open letter directly to alley fashion. To start with, it is transparently obvious, so some emotive language there, that the fast fashion, and there's a nice specific term relating to the actual topic that is being spoken about, so fast fashion industry often cuts costs any way they can, even at the expense of their sweatshop workers in developing countries. Any student textbook in humanities teaches you that ridiculously low wages and excessive working hours is a persistent issue in global supply chains, which consequently leave full-time workers trapped in a cycle of poverty. So it is a generalization, but it's also one that's backed by a fact, and we have some metaphors of it being in a cycle of poverty, which means the continuous approach, but also the metaphor of a student textbook or that common knowledge. Ali, you say that you love to keep us up to date with everything that is happening in the fashion world. However, you fail to mention the lives of those who are underpaid and overworked in horrible working conditions at your mercy. So some emotive language there of underpaid and overworked, and what they use or continue to do throughout this open letter is use direct quotes from alley fashion's brand statement, manipulating it to argue that they're doing everything but what they state they are. In fact, so we know that factual evidence is about to be used. The Australian fashion industry alone was worth approximately $23.5 billion last year, with the value expected to grow at 6.2 over the next 5 years. So they're using statistics, and they're not just dropping statistics in because they want to use a statistic, they're embedding it and referencing who makes it, but then they're building upon it by saying, these profits underpin the economies of developing countries such as Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Vietnam, where clothing such as yours, so that direct address, is one of their largest exports. Ali, your continual plan to grow expansively in the coming years indicates that you are part of this statistic. However, these profits are not reaching the hands of the workers that are making your value, quality, and on-trend outfits. So, Ali, I beg you to trace where your garments are coming from, have a transparent, supportive policy, and encourage worker empowerment. So this is a triplet because we have the statement say, where is it? So, Ali, I beg you, where your garments are coming from, have a transportive, supportive policy and encourage worker empowerment. It's a call to action, but we have transparent, supportive, and encourage. So the three statements there for the call to action, whereby she is arguing what they want Ali to do. Your supposed mantra of live, love, shop, Ali should apply worldwide, where you stay true to the brand and let your hardworking employees live and love, so a nice bit of alliteration there, like they deserve to, with an acceptable wage and working conditions. As you can see, it is ethically viable, so we have that ethics there, which is all throughout this open letter, to change your humanitarian policies to support those in developing countries. There is no doubt that a truly ethical company not only empowers workers with a living wage and acceptable working conditions, but also understands its impacts on the environment. Although your name and clothing appeals to the youth, you, unlike them, aren't as innocent. So there's that kind of analogy of youth being stereotyped as innocent, having impacting the environment since 2001. The environmental effect of the fast fashion industry is significant, accounting for 10% of the world's carbon emissions. So facts and statistics are being built upon here, but being referenced through a footnote. Approximately 2,700 litres of water is needed to produce the cotton for one single t-shirt, with humans consuming 8 billion new pieces of clothing per year, hence the need for more sustainable approaches. Now, that is a statistic that's generalising the concern, but they draw it back to why Ali fashion is a part of this problem and need to change. Even more alarming, Australians dispose of 6,000 kilograms of fashion waste every 10 minutes, with the majority going to landfill. I also like that they've kept it to Australia, or focused it back on Australia, because they're addressing it from an Australian perspective. This makes the tone and the topic a lot more accessible for both, I guess, you as an Australian, but also potentially the moderator, so be mindful of that. If companies like yourself were to invest in the construction of quality pieces, people would not have to dispose of clothes as often. Bit of a generalization there, but it is true. Not to mention, have you ever thought about all the carbon emissions released as you brag about your low-cost clothing and shipping worldwide? So we have that rhetorical question that's addressed to the audience of Ali Fashion. Ali, please understand your impact on the environment and manage your footprint to keep waterways, the earth, and atmosphere healthy. So there's that triplet again, and we're talking about a carbon emission footprint. So there's a specific term in relation to the topic being addressed, not a literal footprint. You say you are continually scouring the globe for new trends. However, very soon there won't be a globe to scour if there aren't significant changes to environmental policies within the fast fashion industry. As a result, it is crucial that changes to your environmental policy and investments in sustainable fibers need to be made to protect our precious environment. So there's that inclusive language of the collective our, precious environment for generations of customers to come. And once again, that's their opening arguments. And you can see it's quite long, but it has used a number of techniques, but it's always argued the same point. Only to then now focus on a new point for their new topic within the argument. You may point out that you are not the only fast fashion company who fails at dealing with these imperative issues, so emotive language there. However, like a disobedient student, you have been told to change for the past 4 years and have still not made corrections. So I like the simile of comparing once again to a disobedient student. This is in a way using a rebuttal whereby they're addressing an alternative argument, but then cleverly arguing against it, because the facts show that they've been told this in the past 4 years but haven't made a correction. If other fast fashion companies such as Cotton On can have similar prices to you while still being graded an A-, you can too. So it's that metonymy of comparison, where we have that idea of a comparison. Your customers also welcome this, as a national survey saw 70% of Australian customers would pay more for clothes if they knew workers had a decent working wage and conditions. So once again, keeping it as a collective statement, but also using statistics from Australians. Your clothing is supposed to give your customers confidence. However, shouldn't they also feel confident? So that, once again, wordplay on the idea of confidence, of feeling empowered by what we wear, but also confidence in what we wear. That it hasn't come at the cost of the environment and worker exploitation. You say that you are a young lady's destination for stylish clothes. However, this should not come at a literal cost to, I would hate to imagine it, young girls such as myself who are ironically making clothes they could never be able to afford on wages you pay them. So there's the anecdote comparison to the author of this being actually a consumer, but then drawing the comparison between them and the very young girls in the third world countries who are forced to make these clothes for a living. Be an example of change to other companies who fail to meet acceptable guidelines, and you will see me back in your store. Clearly, it is time to update your policies instead of your Instagram page to represent the values of your customers despite what other companies may be doing. So once again, there's that idea of a call to action, but they still summarize in a clever wordplay of update. Ali Fashion, I hope you will reconsider your policies regarding the wages and working conditions of your employees and work to minimize your environmental and economic footprint. Your impact on garment workers in developing countries and the environment may be more devastating than you realize. It should not matter how bad other companies are. You need to change. Instead of updating your wardrobe, you need to update your humanitarian and environmental policies to represent the values of your customers to avoid further blood, sweat, and tears. So nice little triplet and pun there at the price of t-shirts. After all, isn't fashion about creating new trends instead of following old ones? So that's the hyperphoria, where in a way they've asked a question but answered it by addressing the trend of not of fashion but of companies doing the right thing. As you can see, it's a bit unique. The student was quite passionate about fashion and clothing, but also the environmental humanitarian instances. And through their choice of having the audience be Ali Fashion, and if we think about the tone, it is both calm but factual and logical, and it's drawing upon the fairness and the need for equality. The student was able to achieve an A+ because of the various techniques, but the voice that they've given themselves when speaking directly to Ali Fashion. Thanks.